Ole Miss and Lane Kiffin, they seem to have options in quarterback recruiting for next season.
You are Locked On Ole Miss, your daily podcast on the Ole Miss Rebels. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
This is the Locked On Ole Miss podcast, the most watched Ole Miss podcast. I am your host, Steven Willis, a 10-year veteran member of the national media with Yahoo Sports and a former Ole Miss staff member. Today, we're talking about the quarterback recruits that are getting the most buzz in Ole Miss circles. Fans are locked in on Landon, Duckworth, and Ryder Lyons, but Ole Miss isn't stopping there. The Rebels are pushing for a reach for the stars level quarterback, also while keeping an eye on talented prospects just waiting for their opportunity as well. Lane Kiffin's high school recruiting is getting real close to leveling up, and we break all of that down. We also talk about the bad weekend that was for Chris Beard and the Ole Miss men's basketball team. We'll discuss that a little bit. We're free and available on all the podcast apps and on YouTube. Thank you for making Locked On Ole Miss your first listen every day, and a special shout out to the insiders and everydayers who make this show what it is. Today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel. Right now, new FanDuel customers can get $150 in bonus bets if your first $5 bet wins. And for your second listen, check out Chris Gordy at Locked On SEC and Corey Burton at Locked On Vandy for more college football and SEC insights. Let's get started. So Ole Miss is getting ready to really kick off their 2026 recruiting cycle, and the recruiting calendar has gotten so compressed over the last couple of years. Quarterbacks really start committing January, February, March timeframe. That's the first step of your class. Official visit season kicks off in May and June, and you're signing in December. Everything has been moved forward to the point where those official visits are mattering at that point. So Ole Miss is going after a quarterback for the 2026 signing class, and this year is kind of an important class for Ole Miss. Ole Miss needs to hit in 2026. They got their Austin Simmons. Austin Simmons, you're going to have him potentially this season. If he has a good year, he could go pro, but odds are you will have him next season as well. And Ole Miss is set for those 2 years at the quarterback position. But what happens after that? Ole Miss famously did not sign a quarterback, a high-level quarterback, in the 2025 recruiting cycle because, honestly, they didn't need to. But with Walker Howard transferring to Louisiana Lafayette and Ole Miss going down to essentially having two scholarship quarterbacks between Austin Simmons and A.J. Maddox, Ole Miss needed to get a quarterback in Pierce Clarkson, so they got him in the transfer portal window. But in 2025, since they did not land Deuce Knight, it was imperative that Ole Miss signed a quarterback in the 2026 class. If that makes sense. I might have just been rambling, but I think I made a little bit of sense as well. The number one quarterback that's kind of on the tip of everybody's tongue right now is Landon Duckworth. He's quarterback out of Jackson High School in Alabama. He is a really good quarterback. He is 6'3", 190 pounds, super athletic guy, really strong arm. The guy just makes plays at the high school level. And he is the one that everybody is looking at right now. He's got official visits coming up to Georgia, Florida State, and South Carolina, and potentially Auburn. I've heard Auburn mentioned around this quarterback, but we'll see exactly what happens. Anytime an Alabama kid has an Alabama or an Auburn offer, you pay attention to that. So we'll see if he actually visits there. Ole Miss has all of the buzz on this quarterback right now. If you were to tell me that Ole Miss signed a quarterback at this point in the 2026 signing class, it is potentially this quarterback. This is the one that's on the tip of everybody's tongue right now. And we talked to Brian Smith about everything he has going for him. Brian likes this quarterback a whole bunch. He's not the only top-level quarterback that Ole Miss is going after this season. They're also checking out Ryder Lyons. He's a quarterback out of Folsom High School in California. He is ranked as high as the number 3 player in the entire country. He is a consensus top 10 player. He's the number 3 quarterback in the class and the number 3 player in California, a severely populated state. Now, I think there's a slight chance that Ole Miss can somehow get a Ryder Lyons and a Landon Duckworth. In a perfect world, there's a world where Ole Miss lands both of them. And let me explain why Ole Miss would be able to do that. The reality is with Ryder Lyons is he's kind of a 2027 or 2026 quarterback class, or 2027 after signing day. The calendar's got me all mixed up. He's a year after this year, even though he is going to sign in December. And that is because after high school, he is going on a Mormon mission for a year, and he is going to enroll in January of 2027 at the school of his choice. He's going to take a year off from football, which means you could sign a potential high-level quarterback in this 2026 quarterback class, and you could have somebody in the 2027 quarterback class. Jamison Powell, a wide receiver from Folsom High School in California, has already committed to Ole Miss. It is worth paying attention to what is going on there. Ryder Lyons is an elite quarterback, and there's a lot of inroads that Ole Miss kind of is developing around Ryder Lyons right now. Ole Miss signing Pierce Clarkson. He's the son of Steve Clarkson, who is the quarterback guru out in California. Ryder Lyons goes to some of his retreats. That happens as well. Obviously, a wide receiver committed. There's a lot of things happening behind the scenes that makes Ryder Lyons at least interesting, and Ole Miss having a puncher's chance at this prospect. Now, Oregon and Southern Cal, those two are going to be the preeminent options for Lyons, because a California kid from Folsom High School, he's going to be looking that direction as well. So we'll see exactly how it goes. Now, another player that everybody should keep an eye on is Keyshawn Henderson out of Legacy SSS in Texas. This guy is a 5-star on 2 scouting services at the moment, including ESPN and Rivals. He was, I think, the MVP of the Navy All-American Bowl as a junior. He plays quarterback at a small school in the Houston area, and he dominates it. He has very RG3 level talent. That is the comp. RG3 is the comp for Keyshawn Henderson. He is committed currently to the Houston Cougars because Houston told him immediately, we are recruiting you only as a quarterback. You are being brought here to be a quarterback, and everybody else is like, well, let's wait and see exactly what happens. Lane Kiffin has already been to Houston to visit this prospect. This is a big-time deal. And if you notice, there's a lot of players that are like the national 14 in the country, the national 7 in the country. Lane Kiffin is in on. So we'll see exactly how that goes. But Keyshawn Henderson kind of fits the bill of Ole Miss in their shoot for the stars type quarterback as well. Now, another quarterback that we haven't talked about, we haven't done a get you know your session. This is an Oregon commit named Jonas Williams out of Lincoln Way East in Illinois. He's a consensus 4-star, consensus number 65 player in the country, 7 quarterback, number 1 player in Illinois. Really good guy, got an offer from Ole Miss. We'll see if he actually visits. All I know is Ole Miss has offered, as have everybody, but we'll see how many inroads that Ole Miss is able to make on this player. Jake Fahey is a quarterback out of Del Valle High School in El Paso, Texas. 4-star quarterback. He is a commitment to Arizona State as we sit right now. If you look at the national rank, he's national number 119 quarterback. He's the 10th quarterback, and he's the number 15 player in the state of Texas. He's a really good player. It's going to be hard to flip from Arizona State. They kind of have it cooking at the moment at the Sun Devils. And we'll talk in the second segment coming up about Luke Fahey. A quarterback out of Mission Viejo in California. I think he's an interesting prospect. He's a little bit undersized. He kind of has a little DeMond Williams in his game. The kid that was committed to Ole Miss that ended up at Washington. We'll see exactly how that goes for him. But Luke Fahey has a chance to really take off and get to 4 stars and beyond because he has a super strong arm. We'll look at him next. You know, Ole Miss is making sure the quarterback position is locked in. You know, don't overlook Keyshawn Henderson, but Luke Fahey is a name to watch a little bit. They may not be getting the headlines, but these big-time prospects, stay tuned for what could be in store for them and what future they could have with the Rebels. When the game tips off, the NBA action is just getting started, and there's no better place to get in on the action than with FanDuel. It's America's #1 sports book. With FanDuel, you can place live bets throughout the game, so even if you miss the opening tip-off or want to bet on a fourth quarter comeback or something like that, you can stay in the action. And if you're looking for a bigger payout, you can even combine your live bets into a same-game parlay. I love using the FanDuel's live betting feature because it keeps every moment of the game exciting. Whether I'm backing my team for a late game rally or picking a player for hit a clutch three, I feel like I'm never missing my chance. So the app is super easy to use, and when you win, you get paid instantly. So right now, FanDuel customers can get $150 in bonus bets if that first $5 bet wins. So just visit FanDuel.com to join today. That's FanDuel.com for your shot at $150 in bonus bets. Make every moment more with FanDuel, the official sports betting partner of the NBA. A couple of names to pay attention to. One of the names that we are going to be looking at is Luke Fahey. He is the quarterback out of Mission Viejo High School in California. He is nationally the number 338 player in the country. He is the 22 ranked quarterback, the number 36 player in California. He's a 3-star on On3, a 3-star on 247, a 3-star on ESPN, a 4-star, number 147 in the country on Rivals. The thing that we have with Luke Fahey is he's listed at 6'1", 193. I'm not 100% sure he's 6'1", 193. He might be 6 foot even, something like that. But this quarterback reminds me a little bit of Matt Corral and also of Damon Williams with the way he plays the game. Luke Fahey has a super strong arm. You see him at hold shots on the sideline. Let's go to the highlights right now. Hold shots on the sideline, using his arm, throwing the football. Luke Fahey can make every throw down the field because he has a super strong arm. And in this age of dual threat quarterbacks and running quarterbacks and things like that, you don't necessarily need the height to be a drop back passer. And if you can handle what is going on with Luke Fahey and his height, you're probably going to enjoy him as a quarterback. Now, he quarterbacks at Mission Viejo High School in California. Everybody has heard of Mission Viejo High School. It's one of the football factories that exist in California, and they do great jobs of putting players into high-level programs every single year. It feels like every year there's a player going at a high level from Mission Viejo High School to USC or somewhere else, Oregon. They just move them all over the country, and Ole Miss has a chance to land a quarterback in Luke Fahey, who is potentially a really, really good player. Listen, you want a quarterback that can throw the football. You know, Mike Leach, 10 years ago, 15 years ago, he was asked about dual threat quarterbacks. And he said, rest his soul, that dual threat quarterbacks is just a quarterback that can't throw the football. He wanted a drop back passer 100% of the time. That's not what people need anymore. That's not what people want anymore. The game has changed a great bit. And now you need quarterbacks like Luke Fahey. You need quarterbacks that have a little bit of that wiggle to them. You need a quarterback that can be a +1 in the run game. And you most of all need a quarterback that can attack downfield, because noodle arm quarterback, weak arm quarterbacks, they can still do a good job of hitting the checkdowns, the RPOs. You can find a fairly weak-armed quarterback to have a good bit of success in the college game today because of the RPO system and what they do. But what you need is a quarterback that can make people pay down the field, that can make safeties that creep up get hurt, to make the other team play you honest. If you have a quarterback that can do that, it's going to open up your running game. You're going to be able to attack still in the RPO game. And plus, you're going to be able to attack down the field as well. And Ole Miss has had that over the last couple of years. Jackson Dart was a deep ball thrower. To the point where fans would get upset with Ole Miss throwing the ball downfield so much. Matt Corral was a down the field thrower. Ole Miss has had a traditional down the field passing game probably ever since Bo Wallace, if you count after Eli Manning. There's Bo Wallace, Chad Kelly, Jordan Ta'amu. Ole Miss has been known for attacking down the field, and Luke Fahey is another quarterback that can do that as well. I think everybody needs to pay attention to this quarterback. Now, he could end up at several West Coast schools or Big Ten schools or something like that. This guy, I think, is a high major quarterback. He is a power 2 quarterback to where he's going to end up in the Southeastern Conference or the Big Ten. I think that's where he is going to end up. So we'll see if Luke Fahey, how he makes it at the next level and if he decides to get to Ole Miss. He's already visited Ole Miss, I do believe, and I think he intends to come back again as well. There's a relationship there. I think Lane Kiffin has visited out at Mission Viejo as well. He likes him as a player. Another player to pay attention to is Reese Wise. He's quarterback out of Westlake, Texas, in Austin, Texas. He's a 3-star quarterback on 3, 3-star on 247, not ranked on ESPN, and he's a 3-star on Rivals. Austin Westlake is the high school that has created Nick Foles and Drew Brees, and all of their quarterbacks seemingly look alike. The most recent was Cade Klubnik, the quarterback of the Clemson Tigers. All the quarterbacks that come out of there look the same, and I don't mean that as an insult. They can play the game, and he visited Ole Miss, and you get the feeling that the moment he has a committable offer, he is going to commit. It just feels like that is where his mind is kind of made up at the moment. Now, it could change. This is recruiting, but he's the national 467 player in the country, 34th rated quarterback, 61 in the state of Texas. So we'll see exactly what it sits for him. Reese Wise is a quarterback, again, listed at 6'1", 205, literally plays the game like Jackson Dart did. You see a lot of similarities in what they did, but he doesn't have the size of Jackson Dart. He's 6'1", 205. He's more synonymous with a Matt Corral size-wise than with a Jackson Dart, who was 6'2", 6'3", 225 pounds, and just enjoyed running the ball and kind of playing the quarterback position as a running back. But Ole Miss has a chance. And if you told me that Ole Miss is going to land a quarterback in this class, the 2026 class, I would say that it would come from this list that I just put out. So we'll see how it goes. Ole Miss needs a quarterback in 2026. That's the reason we're focusing so much on the different opportunities that Ole Miss has. They need a quarterback in this 2026 class because they failed to land Deuce Knight. Now, there's going to be 9 opportunities to sign Deuce Knight after he arrived at Auburn. And if Hugh Freeze doesn't win 8 games potentially in 2025, I think Ole Miss has a really good chance to land Deuce Knight again. And I think Deuce Knight is always going to be at least thinking about Ole Miss. Now, I'm not saying he's not happy at Auburn. I'm not saying it's not exactly what he wants. But I am saying that Ole Miss is going to have an opportunity with him as this goes on further. So with the transfer portal, high school recruiting isn't quite at the level of what it was, but high school recruiting for positions like quarterbacks, it's always going to be important because you definitely need multi-year players in your program out of the quarterback position, and we'll see exactly how that goes. Anyway, when we come back, Ole Miss took a tough loss to Mississippi State. But was it just a bad night or something more? Chris Beard's post-game move tells me this was just kind of a blip and not a trend. So stick around for the breakdown. So Ole Miss lost to Mississippi State 81-71. Here's the box score from the game. Ole Miss didn't shoot particularly well. They started out 4-7 from 3. They ended up 2 of their next 17 or something like that from 3. That's a problem. Ole Miss had 11 turnovers in the game, including one where they threw it to a player that just wasn't looking. Ole Miss got mauled on the boards, which absolutely can't happen. And Ole Miss fouled 22 times. State fouled 24 times. It wasn't a ref show, but it was kind of herky-jerky. So that is what happened in the ball game. This is a game that Mississippi State won the game soundly. But the ball game doesn't necessarily matter with what's going on, because if we're going to be real, and you know me, I like to be real on these podcasts, losing to Mississippi State this time, it didn't mean anything more than losing to Mississippi State. How you take a loss to Mississippi State's probably the worst it's going to be, because the reality is Ole Miss did not change their ceiling or their season at all by losing this basketball game. It's weird. They did not change their ceiling at all by losing this basketball. It was just losing a basketball game. It was just them losing to Mississippi State. And I get it, by the way. Nobody wants to lose to Mississippi State. That's the game that you want to win more than anything else. I lived in Mississippi. I understand how that's like. I realize that after Mississippi State wins a game, it's going to be very bad for Ole Miss fans and vice versa. But the reality is Ole Miss is still probably sitting on the 4 line or the 5 line in seeding, and they're wins away from Vandy and Oklahoma, away from having 10 Southeastern Conference wins and being firmly at the top half of the bracket in the NCAA tournament. The reality is this Mississippi State game changed nothing. And Ole Miss fans that can understand that and see that, they can also see what happened after the game and view that as a sign of what is going on. After the game, Chris Beard sent all 5 starters into the press conference first to answer questions from the press as an accountability ploy. That lets you know where Chris Beard was sitting immediately after that game. I do not think that rant after the Ole Miss Mississippi State game by Chris Beard could have gotten a PG-13 rating. I do not. I think there was some heavy language back there. And then they sent the starters in to face accountability with the press. Whenever they answer the questions and got the questions in the post game, like what happened, because that's kind of what happens in one of those press conference meetings, you heard complacency. You heard not aggressive. You heard a lot of buzzwords that just make you sick to hear, honestly, as far as a fan looking at the outside, looking in. The reality of this basketball team is they know, everybody knew, that after the South Carolina game, they had punched their ticket into the big dance. And all of their motivation was gone. They didn't have anything in their mind to immediately play for. These are all transfer students, so the rivalry isn't exactly baked in and super important. So whenever the team is built completely off transfers like it is, it can be problematic, and the rivalry doesn't have the meaning that others do. Now, those transfer players, they want to make the NCAA tournament. That's been a goal this whole time. Ole Miss as a program wanted to make the NCAA tournament. Everything has been about making the NCAA tournament. So once you made it, it makes sense that they took a breath. Now, nobody wanted them to, and this was an exact wrong time to do it, but that's exactly what happened. Chris Beard sending those starters in to face the media and the fan base and all of that. That move let the players know that this is not acceptable. This is not something that we're going to do. Chris Beard in the press conference after that game referred to his own team as something that coaches never want to refer to their own team and never do refer to their own team. He called them soft. He said, as a coach, you hate to see that, but this team played soft. They were not aggressive. He talked about complacency setting in. And luckily for him, and I think he understands this as well, and I think he said this over the course of leading up to the Mississippi State game. We're still at the phase of getting as good as you can be. You're not in survive and advance mode like you would be in the SEC tournament and the NCAA tournament. You are in the point of still forming what you're going to be in the March tournament. And it is probably good news that this happened over a month away from tournament basketball, even though the lack of the regular season is about to get a little bit more difficult. You have a road game at Vanderbilt. That's going to be a difficult game. Vanderbilt has been a tough out for absolutely everybody this season. Prepare yourself for that being a difficult game. And Ole Miss traditionally, save for Marshall Henderson hitting a 40-footer, Ole Miss traditionally struggles at Memorial Gymnasium. For whatever it isn't weird like it was, but it still is kind of a weird environment. And then Ole Miss goes to Auburn. Auburn's a tough matchup for everybody. They got a win in Coleman Coliseum against Alabama. Auburn is the best team in the country. That is going to be a difficult game. Then Ole Miss faces Oklahoma at home. That is an absolute must-win game for seeding. Ole Miss needs that game because of the way the season closes. Then Ole Miss hosts Tennessee. That's a need-to-get type game. Tennessee is a 2 seed according to Joe Lunardi. Ole Miss needs to figure out a way to get that game, and then they travel to Gainesville to take on the Florida Gators before tournament season starts with the SEC tournament and the NCAA tournament. All of this is big stuff. Everything is in front of this Ole Miss team as it sits right now. Saturday was just a bad day. It was a really bad day at the office. And this week, as Tim Thomas likes to say, and I refer to it as a severe emotional event, after the game, I got that wrong. Tim Thomas, correct me. It's a significant emotional event is what Bob Welch called it. Whenever games like the Mississippi State game happen, the players would have significant emotional events after that. And I think this game is going to be a long week. What could have been a nice bye week with a win to get ready for Vanderbilt, it's going to be a refocus week. It's going to be a hard work week, and Chris Beard is going to do what he needs to do to get Ole Miss right. That's the way it's going to work, and we'll see exactly how Ole Miss goes about that. Today is the first day that we start uploading everything to what we call Tegna One, by the way. And Tegna One is going to be an avenue for the new app for the Locked On Network that is going to be released sometime in the next 2 to 4 weeks or something like that. This app's going to be a game changer. It's going to be absolutely massive. You'll be able to go into the app and say, hey, I want Locked On Ole Miss. I follow them, Locked On Saints, and Locked On Cubs. And each day you will have a timeline populated of those broadcasts. The app is a really cool thing. And when it gets here, you are going to enjoy the heck out of it. And of course, the Locked On Ole Miss podcast, we're enjoying our reach that has been developing all over the country as well to go along with our YouTube page and all of that. Right now, Locked On Ole Miss could not be going much better than it is. So thank you very much for making Locked On Ole Miss your go-to source for Ole Miss sports. We pride ourselves on the most comprehensive perspectives, which is why we're the number one podcast out there. Your support means the world to us. A little bit later on today, barring technology failing us, Zach Berry is going to be on the show. And we have some surprise interviews that we are working on over the next couple of weeks. We'll see how that goes as well. Thank you for making Locked On Ole Miss your first listen today. For your second listen, check out Locked On SEC Podcast. Host Chris Gordy holds no punches covering the best conference in all of college sports. Find Locked On SEC on YouTube or wherever you listen to podcasts. Hotty toddy, everyone. And remember, analytics is just the old English word that means bad football. We'll see you tomorrow.